All right, check this out. So I have movement here, and I have no app running. So this is months of work that we've been going through to release this new firmware update, and essentially it's the biggest improvement we've made to date. So what we have come up with is making the MaxxStick fully plug and play. And what that means is you no longer require the MaxxStick app. You no longer have to install any other drivers like the virtual gamepad emulator driver. This essentially just shows up on the computer as an X input device, and you can just start playing whatever game you want. At the same time, we did not want to just leave it at that. We wanted to have the ability to have all those additional features and controls we had before. We wanted to be able to have the ability to put this into keyboard mode, and we wanted to have the ability to put it into direct input mode and enable different features that we've had in the web utility before. In the process, though, what we had to come up with is a completely new utility that uses a different protocol to do that communication. So, like I said before, this was quite a bit of work, right? So when we connect to the newest utility, which is maxxstick.com/Maxx Utility, you can also get to it if you just type in maxxstick.com/Maxx. It'll take you to the MaxxStick Maxx Utility. You hit connect, and then you get to choose the MaxxStick. It'll connect up, and as you can see, 5.01 is the plug and play driver that we just released, and it's currently in X input mode, all that stuff. So I'm going to walk through a couple of the new features that are in the Maxx Utility and the new firmware. Like before, you don't have to hit save. Everything you do on the Maxx Utility is essentially saved into memory within the inside the MaxxStick, and so as a result of that, you don't have to have this web utility open. You basically can make your edits and just kind of close it off and be done with it. So let's go to the settings section first, and as you can see, we now have obviously our operating modes: X input mode, keyboard mode, and direct input mode is hidden again. But now what we've done is, instead of making you have to get a paper clip to expose direct input mode, you can literally just enable it by pressing this button here and then unplugging the USB and plugging it back in. And when you connect next time, the direct input mode will be an option that you can enable. And then on top of that, we enabled another thing called polling rate. And polling rate is essentially how often the MaxxStick talks to the computer. It defaults to 1000 hertz. But with this, you can reduce it to 500, to 250, or 100 hertz, right? So it's really up to you. Under calibration, it looks similar to before. We had these red circles in our old calibration. The difference is that before, only the black area would be analog movement. If you were to get into the red area, it would go to 100%. You'd still have 360-degree movement, but you wouldn't be able to really do anything here. Now, when we go into this mode, we can see that we still have full range of motion. So we don't lose anything. So if you're moving in Fortnite, for instance, and you're crouching, you sometimes want to crouch at 90% or 95%, and that will essentially make your footsteps less, for instance, right? So you don't lose that now with the dead zones. So that's great. And then we have another thing called jitter reduction strength. So jitter reduction strength essentially stops all that superfluous extra data being sent back and forth to the computer. And so I'm going to turn this down to 0, and I'm going to show you what I mean, right? So jitter reduction strength to 0 essentially turns it off. So if we move the thumbstick now, you can see that you are having micro movements being constantly sent to the computer, right? So with jitter reduction strength on to 25, for instance, now it locks in place. So it still is completely responsive. There's no impact to responsiveness. It just impacts how much micro movements are being sent to the MaxxStick. In terms of Fortnite mode, nothing's really changed here. So we basically still have the same sort of features as we did before. We have the movement lock and the ability to enable fast turn modes, which different types, so that you can essentially have the MaxxStick be quite responsive and still have the ability to have movement lock. And so under keyboard settings, you can rebind your keyboard. So right now, if you were in keyboard mode And by default, this would be set to up arrow, down arrow, left and right arrows, and then backslash as the thumbstick button when you press it in, right? So now you can rebind by basically pressing this button and just choosing a new key to press, right? So I changed it from Y to U, for instance. So yeah, so there you go. These are all the new features and capabilities within the MaxxStick, right? So we've had it working really well. It's been very stable. There is one drawback, right? And during the process of developing this firmware, the Chromium team released a change to their gamepad API, and as a result of that, we were working through it, and all of a sudden we weren't getting movement showing up the um, on the screen anymore. It would still work in games, it just wouldn't work in the Chromium browsers, and we were able to isolate it down to a flag that basically got enabled in one of the commits, and as a result, it has created a situation where you have to, if you want to use the MaxxStick web utility and have movement show up here, you have to follow these instructions, which are very simple. You literally just copy this URL by pressing this button, paste it into a new browser, and then change a drop down from default to disabled and relaunch, and you'll have movement again. So this basically impacts seeing movement on Gamepad Tester as well as on the Maxx Utility. So yeah. So let's walk through how to install the new firmware now. To update the firmware on the MaxxStick, it's really simple. What we're going to do is we're going to put it into program mode. And when you're in program mode, essentially it creates a thumb drive on your file explorer. And all you have to do is drop the firmware file into the thumb drive that's created on top of the MaxxStick, and it will load the new firmware. And then the last step is literally just calibrate. So it's a pretty simple process. So what we're going to do is to put it into program mode, we're going to unplug the USB. We're going to grab a paper clip, and you can see there's a hole at the bottom of the MaxxStick right here, and we're going to basically make sure to push that button down. And while we're pushing that button down, we're going to plug in the MaxxStick. And what that does, it creates a thumb drive. On your PC, you may have to go to File Explorer and find the thumb drive. The thumb drive will be called RPI-RP2. So it shows up on my in my PC right here. That's great. And from the mailing list, you just grab the UF2 file, the firmware. And as you can see, it's called MaxxStick RS PNP 5.01 -field .uf2. And so this file right here is not an executable. It is not one that you can basically double click and something will happen. You literally just have to copy this into the thumb drive, okay? And when you do that, the MaxxStick firmware immediately starts, and now it's going to expect you to do a calibration. And so what it did is, as soon as it started, it took a center point calibration, and now it's waiting for you to teach it and map the circularity of the MaxxStick. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some circles, and when we're done those circles, we're going to push the thumbstick in, and that tells the MaxxStick we're done our calibration. Okay, so with that done, when we go back to the Maxx Utility now, you got full complete motion, and that's it. And now you can be able to connect to this. You can find it here, you can connect, and it shows up. So yeah, simple as that. So there you go. The MaxxStick is now fully plug and play, and it's better than it's ever been before. So let us know what you think. Give us some feedback, and we always love feedback from our customers. So yeah, like and subscribe, guys.